So we have started the streaming and we are live on YouTube. So welcome everyone, good morning. And today I am Arushi Kulwal, the moderator of today's panel discussion. I take immense pleasure to extend to you a warm welcome on behalf of the VICIS VIT Bhopal student chapter. VICIS is a global community that supports women, male allies, and which supports women, male allies, and students who want to get together to empower each other and bring more women in the industries. Our student chapter promotes and follows the VICIS mission of sisterhood by bringing together the women in industry and future workplaces together. The CSDF division, the Cybersecurity and Digital Forensics division at VIT Bhopal, yearns to enlighten the young minds with cybersecurity education and awareness. Today, we are hosting our panel discussion with our esteemed panelists on the topic, Ransomware Attack, how an organization can be prepared for the changing threat landscape. So I would like to introduce the panelists for our session. We have with us Ms. Vandana Verma, the Security Advocate and Global Board of Directors at OWASP. She also leads the InfoSec Girls community. We welcome you, ma'am. Next, we have Ms. Jeannie Sujin Jain. She is the Head of Public Affairs and Government Relations at APAC at Kaspersky, Singapore. We are honored to have you with us. I now welcome Major Preeti Bishekar. She is the Relationship Manager, APAC and MEA at IBM. She is also the board member of VICIS India affiliate. Welcome, ma'am. And next we have Ms. Sarba Roy. She is the Product Security Consultant at Umpqua Bank USA. She is also the membership chair of VICIS Oregon affiliate. A hearty welcome to all the panelists. So I would like to give a brief insight into today's topic of discussion before we begin with it. Over the past year, various industries like healthcare, commerce, finance have dealt with a surge in ransomware attacks launched by cybercriminals. Well, interestingly, Checkpoint Research reported in March 2021 that ransomware attacks have seen a 57% increase since the beginning of 2021, amid the disclosure of major vulnerabilities like Microsoft Exchange vulnerability. Most recently, Colonial Pipeline, a major US fuel company, was the victim of such an attack. In a statement on May 9, 2021, the FBI confirmed that a professional cybercriminal group called DarkSide was responsible for the ransomware attack on the Colonial Pipeline network. It appears to be one of the largest ever cyber attack on an American energy system. The Colonial Pipeline is indeed the largest pipeline system in USA that carries over 300 million of barrels of refined oil products per day between Texas and New York. So it is indeed a critical infrastructure that supplies almost 50% of the gasoline and jet fuel utilized by numerous industries. So starting with our discussion, as evident by the recent ransomware attack, these often sabotage the critical infrastructure. So what should organizations dealing with such critical infrastructure do so as to combat and prevent the ransomware attacks? I would like to start with Jeannie, ma'am.
Okay, I muted myself. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, thank you. Perfect. Good day, everyone. That was a very good introduction and happy to be here. I seem to make this appearance once a year with VICIS, especially the student chapter. Very happy to be meeting other like-minded women, equally dynamic and super achievers in their respective fields as well. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Colonial Pipeline, much talk about, happened in May 7th last month. And then I think you would have heard that by May the 13th, yeah, about 6 days later, the company started fuel deliveries in majority of its markets. But the company on the 13th, so I'm sort of tracking a little bit of the timeline. It warned that it would take some time for the product delivery supply chain to return to normal. And of course, later on, we all knew that Colonial Pipeline had actually paid the hackers, right? How much? About $5 million in cryptocurrency as early as the first day, which is on the 7th, right? And in fact, it happened several hours after the attack happened. They paid. That's what's reported. That's what we all know, right? So I think what comes to mind is, why did it take so long for Colonial Pipeline to restore the pipeline's operation? And it's been also reported that that's really because the decrypting tool received from the attackers was so slow that the company had to continue using its own backup to restore its systems. Right, so I'm going to talk about that a little later as well. And this is something that I'm going to probably keep repeating every time I talk about ransomware, which is, if you don't remember anything else that I say, remember this. If you ever, any organization, individual gets attacked by ransomware, never pay the ransom, right? The impact is great from Colonial Pipeline. So bad, so severe that dark site developers themselves published a statement on their website on the 10th of May. I'm not sure if you caught that, to the effect that, hey guys, we are good people, all we want is money. Seemingly to disclaim responsibility of the event. But again, of course, that's up to you to believe or not, right? So ransomware, to really answer your question, having laid out that sort of context and foundation, we must understand that as far as ransomware are concerned, there usually is, it's not a 1-2 person activity. It is usually involving a huge syndicate. I would loosely use that word, syndicate, behind every single operation. So recently at Kaspersky, we've talked about ransomware 2.0. I won't go into those details because it tends to be very technical, but in short, yes, criminal groups are getting bolder and they're asking for ever increasing ransoms, right? Of course, after Colonial Pipeline, which we shouldn't restrict ourselves to talking about today, JBS, right? Several others as well. And ransomware attacks also have an opportunistic aspect to them. As far as we know, these groups don't look through Financial Times to decide who they're going after next. As long as it's opportunistic, they would jump on that opportunity. So what do we do, right? For organizations, pointers and all that. I have 5 or 6 tips, if you would like to call it. First, always, right? Keep, as individuals even, keep your software up to date on all your devices to prevent attackers from infiltrating your network by exploiting vulnerabilities. That's clear, that's obvious, that's the easiest point. Second, protect your corporate environment. I always say that humans, people, they are your weakest link. You and I actually are the weakest link. If we're not savvy, we're not aware. So for corporates, educate your employees. There are lots of free tools, including those which I'm happy to offer from Kaspersky, dedicated training courses to help people. Next would be to carry out a cybersecurity audit on your organization, on your networks, remediate any weaknesses you've discovered in the perimeter or inside the network. And then also, of course, to enable your ransomware protection for all your endpoints. There are free, there is a free Kaspersky anti-ransomware tool for business as well. Happy to share the link as well, because these are resources, good things must share, right? And then also, of course, install your anti-APT and ADR solution, so on and so forth, right? Last but not least, again, I'm going to end with this point. If you become a victim, never pay the ransom, because if you do, you're actually feeding that industry, right? You're creating and you're incentivizing bad behavior, right? So it won't, and also after paying, this is must note, after you pay the ransom, there is no guarantee that you're going to get your data back, or to get your data back as quickly as you would like you've seen in the Colonial Pipeline case. And you will only encourage criminals to continue their activities. So instead, once you touch wood, God forbid it happens, please, but if it does, report the incident to your local law enforcement agency immediately and try to find a decryptor on the internet. Quite a few of them are actually available. Just go to nomoreransom.org. Lots of, free resources there, right? I'll hand the time back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, totally agreed with the point that the ransom, must not be paid. I would like to forward this discussion to Vandana ma'am to let her views on.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Arushi. Thanks, Ginny, for setting up the whole stage and sharing all these insights. And I would like to add to what Jeannie said, that how it all started. So as per the reports, and I've been reading about all these because this is something which actually disrupted the whole ecosystem for a while. Even there was an emergency which was there, that we should use less of these resources. Yeah. Yeah, I'll just take 1 second. Yeah, sure. Okay. Okay, sure. So, so it all started wherein one of the malicious actors found the credentials on the internet. People are calling it that they found it somewhere. So those credentials was part of one of the breaches, and might be the employee would have used the same password somewhere else or some other account. And that was breached, because of which the password was lying on the internet wherein people can use it. And we have seen that these password scrapping attacks, or people just pick up the database and start using it. Malicious actors, I think they leverage all these credentials very well. So they started leveraging it, and they realized that they can access this certain Colonial pipeline. And how they did it? Using a VPN. That's the most strangest thing. Now, when you use a VPN, you use it specifically to connect it to the organization network. And that's one of the safest system to connect to any organization. And when they got through it, they could make the changes. They actually impacted the system. And one of the person realized, oh, there is something which is going on. There is a ransom which is there. They informed the people inside, and suddenly the whole search started. The systems were shut down. Many things were done around, wherein even President Joe Biden declared the state of emergency on May 9th. And it all started in April, wherein when the attacker actually got access to the system. Now think about when there is it can lead to such a big emergency in the whole ecosystem, and it became talk of the town that we are speaking about it today. How these smaller things can impact the huge network in a country, or maybe the whole world. Like right now we are hit by like we are under a situation where we have to be home, we are all remote. Similarly, in such situations, like Jeannie mentioned few of the points, that we need to do the reviews, we need to make sure that we are following certain guidelines. But one important aspect is our personal hygiene, especially around passwords. So this line I always use when I'm speaking about technology, and especially about passwords, that passwords are like toothbrushes. Do we ever share toothbrushes with anyone? No. Then why do we share our passwords with, or maybe why don't we rotate our passwords? It's so important that if we don't do it, such kind of things would keep happening, whatever we say. And these are not new things. These are not, I would say that which have just cropped up. Since the day that authentication mechanism started, or the people started using passwords, they are talking about it. And we have been given trainings about it. We have been told, even when we join an organization, even join a college, when there is a college ID, the passwords are shared. They tell us that keep changing your password, and when you get it for the first time, change the password. So this whole thing has to go in a direction wherein we understand that our passwords, we are not going to use the passwords which are easy to remember. We are not going to use the password which we have used like 2 months back or 3 months back. And I'll tell you one funny thing, that I don't use the generic password. I use the passwords which are generated by the systems, password generators, and which are not easy to remember. So I can't remember my password, but I do use a password manager. So I think that's one thing that we can do to avoid such attacks. And it was a supply chain attack because there were multiple instances that happened, which led to this huge ransomware attack. And the Colonial pipeline, they had to like give so much money, like 75 bitcoins with the 5 million. That's a huge money. And still after that, the software they got was super slow. So how can you be so sure that when you get the key or when you get the software which is going to decrypt it will be fine? So I would say that just be very cautious about it. And these kind of attacks we've seen in past years as well. Like I remember working on one of the incidents in 2015, which gave us sleepless nights. And still we are dealing with such attacks because these attacks will be there. The only thing we can do is to keep ourselves up to date, follow certain hygiene guidelines, and I think we can avoid these attacks. Over to you, Arushi.
Thank you, ma'am. Totally agreed with the point that credentials are a huge risk factor when it comes to compromise. And indeed, the 2021 data breach investigation report by Verizon highlighted that a majority, that is 61% of the breaches, were attributed to leveraged credentials. So what consequences can having a single layered authentication have on the organization in case of such an attack? Preeti, ma'am.
Firstly, I would like to quickly touch upon key points that Ginny and Vandana highlighted. So, and thank you so much, Arushi, for having me on this forum. So, key things. First thing, I like the concept Ginny mentioned that users are the weakest link. But at the same time, I feel users are also the first line of defense. So it is important for any organization to understand that all their end users, they should know how to identify such sort of attacks or scenarios, and at the same time train them, be prepared. So we should know what they need to do. We don't expect them to solve the problem, but they are our eyes and ears. So they identify these nature of attacks that are happening, and they're the first responders. They tell our quick react teams that are set up to respond to such incidents. So that is first thing. And then second thing, Vandana mentioned about this ransomware attack. So I really loved that. So first thing is, when this is not first time that is happening, right? So we have seen this ransomware attack incidents happening since 2017. So Colonial attack is nothing new. We knew that such nature of attack, they are rather evolving. How are they evolving? So it has 30 years of history how ransomware has started. And now in that scenario, what organizations have done to ensure that if these things, similar nature of attack happens, so we started taking backups so that we don't need to pay the ransom and we have our data handy with us. Now what happened? The attackers are one step ahead of us. What they are doing, they are having the data. They say we will leak your data. We will sell on dark web. So that is another threat we are facing. So what is that we need to do as an organization is to have our preparation of this incident happening. Most important thing is detection. Do we have all the technologies in place to detect? User being our first line of defense. Second thing, how do you sort of analyze and contain these nature of attacks? So in Colonial case, if you see, it had to shut down the entire operations. So what was their response plan? They need to do that planning. The preparation needs to be done. There should be simulation of such exercises so that all the stakeholders in the organization, if they're impacted by such nature of attack, they know very well what is their responsibility, what is the task they're supposed to do, and how we can sort of quickly accelerate our recovery process of the entire operations instead of getting into the shutdown mode. So these are the key things I wanted to add to this ransomware attack. Now, I'm sorry, I lost the question you asked, Arushi. If you can repeat that.
Yeah, sure. So Vandana ma'am highlighted the risk that a single layer of authentication lays, like the only password protected. So how can organizations be prepared in such a case, and how can the single layer of authentication mechanism affect the organization?
Yes, absolutely. So in today's scenario, it is much, much more relevant because we are into a digital transformation, and with the pandemics forcing us to be all over virtual and online. So definitely single layer is very much vulnerable. So the organizations have already moved to multi-factor authentication. So that is the new concept they are doing. But the latest one that people talk about is the zero trust security. So because that is the first entry line for anybody to get into the organization. So zero trust is the concept wherein we do not believe anybody from the organization, not even the CEO. And we do that validation of the authentication and authorization for anybody to get into. So definitely single layer of authentication does not work. We need to look into the multi-factor authentication technologies and solutions to be put in place as an organization to protect ourselves, and at the same time inculcate the overall zero trust framework concept so that we do not get into the trap of such incidents. Over to you, Arushi.
Thank you, ma'am. Sarva, ma'am, what are your thoughts on the same, the combating and preventing the situation in case of critical infrastructure?
Sure. Thanks, Arushi. First of all, I think I'm very lucky and happy to be a part of this esteemed panel. I just love the ideas that my co-panelists shared now. So I think when we talk about ransomware, this has been around for a while. The only thing has changed is that it's ransomwares are now targeting our critical infrastructure. And in order to combat that, there are different ways in which an organization can actually look at it. So one of the key things that MITRE Corporation suggests that, offense and defense, these are two aspects that should go hand in hand in order to protect an organization. And what this means is that while, secure backups, they are the most important aspect, it's also important that we test the backup. It's important for us to ensure that those backups are in either offline or they are stored in remote locations which are in a different network segment. That also brings us to this element of security engineering. So is our network properly segmented with the proper lines of trust that, as to Preeti's point, that when we talk about zero trust, the principle that is dependent on zero trust is trust but verify. So are we really segmenting our networks to deal with any kind of attack? And then the most important element, I think, is incident response. Having a robust incident response process is most important for any organization. And what this means is, in case an incident occurs, do I have the right asset inventory to track my incident to the right asset? Do I have the list of critical contacts whom I should reach out if there's, for communication? Then, do I have a right process in place that, for example, that has the intelligence to actually include all the learning of my endpoint system to prevent an attack that moves around to the other aspects of my network. So these are some of the key elements. And another critical element, I think, to Vandana's point, what she mentioned is identity and access management, and especially privilege access management. Do I have the right measures in place to not just, protect my own password, but also in terms of user roles. Is there a system in which I can have a privilege creep and, move to another, escalate my privileges and, perform certain actions that I am not supposed to do? So and I think you also mentioned, Arushi, like ransomware is such a complex topic. It's not possible for organizations to just combat it using one technique. They should use a layer of techniques. And most importantly, MITRE ATTACK framework should be a very important part of any organization's security and operations center strategy, because that attack framework gives an organization a view into the threats, into the attacker behavior, into the attacker's way of, infiltrating into a system or their infrastructure. So are they really considering that framework in their security and operation systems? So these are some of the key points that I just wanted to share.
Thanks a lot, Sarba. Okay, so totally agreed with the point that zero trust policy and MITRE ATTACK framework should be implemented and followed as well. So I was very keen to know more about the first point that Jeannie mentioned, that never pay ransom. So
Arushi, I lost you there. I think you're muted.
Got on mute, Arushi.
Oh, sorry. I was saying that in this attack, the CEO, Joseph Blon, did give in to the attackers' demand on May 19th. They paid 4.4 million worth Bitcoin. The CEO says that it will take Colonial far more, like tens of millions of dollars, to completely restore their system over the next several months. So what can be the repercussions of giving into the attackers' demands and paying them in Bitcoin? Jeannie, to start with.
Me again? Okay. As I sort of alluded to it just now during my opening response, the repercussions would be, I think, one, of course, we're talking about money, the practical aspects. Second is still on practical aspects. You're not even sure whether paying the ransom would be effective. Third of all, I think there would be a fair amount of reputational loss, actually, for being not resilient enough to withstand the demands of a ransomware attacker and giving in already. And fourth of all, no, so coming back to the third point. So in terms of reputation, I think there is a fine line, and this is purely my personal view. There is a fine line between having weak systems and being attacked in the first place. I know that's bad, right? But you've got to try and do something right from there. And I think paying the ransom doesn't quite fall in that bucket, in my humble opinion. Yeah. So my fourth point would therefore be really, I tend to look at things in a broader picture. Over and above and beyond just this incident here and now, you have got to think of the larger dark side economy, right? So welcome to the dark side, no pun intended. That's how it is. There is an economy that's going on behind the scenes. There is a syndicate that I mentioned. There are actually suppliers of different aspects of making possible a successful ransomware attack. So if you pay the ransom, you're actually feeding the economy, and there is no stopping. It becomes lucrative. Who doesn't want to go join a lucrative trade, right? Then it becomes attractive for more and more. And who knows, young and talented people might be drawn into that and join the dark side, right? So I think in general, I'm not sure if this has got to do with my law background, a little self-righteous maybe, hopefully not. But I really think we all should chip in to sort of stop cybercrime. We all have a role to play. And by not paying ransom, it is a good first step. Yeah. So do your backups, have strong passwords. Everything that these wonderful ladies that have spoken before me have all these pointers that having zero trust, having robust IR teams, incident response teams and all that. Don't share toothbrushes. All these are great tips. Adopt them and let's get the fundamentals in place. That's my view. Yeah. Over back to you, Arushi.
Thank you, Jeannie, ma'am. So what are your views on this, Preeti, ma'am?
Yeah, so I totally agree with Ginny's point here. So we need to understand why not to pay. So first thing, paying a ransom does not guarantee recovery. And it does not guarantee instant recovery, right? At the same time, you need to understand the geographical regulatory model there. So it might also be considered as an offense because we are in a way motivating the cyber criminals by paying them, right? So it is important that at an organization level, whether to pay or not to pay, that decision, we need to involve all the key stakeholders and most importantly, the legal counsel. They need to be involved who would guide, whether the decision needs to be taken or not. So most importantly, most of the organizations say we should not pay the ransom because it is not guaranteeing the recovery. And we don't want to encourage and motivate these cyber criminals further on such malicious activities. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. So forwarding the question to Sarba, ma'am. What do you think about this?
So I think I read a book recently on ransomware where the author very nicely states that there is no honor among thieves. So cyber criminals who are trying to extort ransom from you, they might promise that they will give back your data. But there's to Preeti and Jeannie's point. So the moment you pay a ransom, there's no guarantee, first of all, that you'll get your data back. And most importantly, there is no guarantee that the attacker has not implanted a malware or a backdoor in your system or in your network that can repeat future ransomware incidents. And another aspect, I think I attended a session in which the presenter mentioned that the moment you pay a ransom, you become a soft target for the cyber criminals, and your details are then shared on the dark web. And that's where I think you become a repeated target because they have got their foot on the door and they know your weakness and they want to keep engaging with you. And that's where I think and to Preeti's point also, that legal aspect is the most important. So it's very important to consult with your law enforcement agencies before you just go ahead and pay the ransom. So that's a very critical point to consider. That's what I had in mind.
Yeah, maybe we should have a sequel panel discussion that is titled "How Not to Be on the VIP List of Ransomware Attackers."
Absolutely.
Totally. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Sarba, for your insights on this. So another consequence of a ransomware attack or a big data breach is that it leads to panic. So after this pipeline attack, it supplied half of the East Coast gasoline, right? And it went down for several days. That caused panic buying, shortages, and price spikes in some states. So when ransomware attacks hit these critical infrastructures, it leads to mass panic. It is a consequence. And that only works in attackers' favor. They can increase the ransom. They can, pressurize the company even more. So in this scenario, how can the public be calmed down? Vandana ma'am.
To be candid, this is one question which I think I cannot answer, or maybe all of us cannot answer. Because when anyone gets to know that there is such kind of attack, there is always a jittery feeling that, oh, what will happen? Will I get the gas? Will I get the oil? Or how exactly it will span out? And I've seen cases wherein there was a hospital which was attacked by ransomware. They paid the ransom, and after that also there was no decryption key. So even though you give the money, but how is the surety given that, oh, they'll get the decryption key? And when it comes to keeping our own peace, I think only the way nation can say that, okay, let's stay calm, we'll get through it. And that is the only way that I think anything can be done, because there is no standard procedure. There is no standard way where you can say that, oh, this is the way that we are going to stay calm. No, you don't know. Like I said, that we were not part of the ecosystem when the ransomware hit in 2015. It was a huge attack on one of the media companies, and like it gave us sleepless nights. So when that happened, I think that can happen with anyone else also. And similarly, when the Colonial pipeline attack happened, it became talk of the town. Every country started talking about it, and they started understanding how it happened, why it happened, and the whole sources behind it. And there was one point which was said that we need to consult our legal authorities, which was totally true. And in this case, FBI was also involved, and then only the ransom was paid. So in such scenarios, how should we step forward? The only thing is that the trust in the authorities that we have, the trust that things will work out for good, and it might take some time, but things will work out. And another important aspect is that we always keep a backup, right? We always keep a backup, and in this case also, the things are getting recovered from the database, or the backups, I should specifically say, the backups that we had. So we can only keep that and go back to the earlier version that we had and be okay. These things have happened. Now we have to think very calmly. And there was one question on YouTube that whether we should made these things public or not. These things should be made public so that everyone gets to know. And one amazing thing about security community is that we share information. Like I remember Server was saying that all of these malicious people work together, and that's how they bring out these supply chain attacks, all these attacks, which are chained attacks. So now when they are together, we all have to be together. We have to fight together in it and stay calm as much as possible. Now I'll give it over to Jeannie because she has her hand raised. Jeannie, over to you.
My hand is a little tired now. No, very good points, which makes me sort of just want to add on 1 or 2 points. Really, I think there is no point in panicking. If it's happened, then it's happened, too bad, right? If you haven't taken the preventive measures. But I do remember that when the Colonial pipeline issue first surfaced in early May, for the first time since I think maybe 2014, I think it was reported that the average price of a gallon of gasoline actually across the US increased to almost $3 USD, right? So, and I'm based in Singapore. So in Singapore, same day within the hour, when I went to top up gas in my car, petrol prices already spiked. So obviously there is a lot of, well, of course, that has got to do with supply chain and pricing issues, but also I think it's also a reflection because we started having long lines at the petrol kiosks. So I think generally it's natural for people to panic. But I'm just saying that there really is no point in that. And much earlier on, I did say humans, people, you and I, really are the weakest link. So I think I just want to add one point to say that I think there is a great need for more awareness of how each person in a country, in a society, in a community, in a corporate, right, in the world can contribute to this fight against cybercrime, because everyone plays a part. Everyone can be a superhero in that sense, right? And therefore there is a need, I think maybe state efforts, as well as, working hand in hand with NGOs and even private sector, so that, just having that public-private people partnership to better educate individuals, basically the links, on how to be more savvy and how to avoid being the weakest link. Not just people in cybersecurity, not just people in tech, not just people in, industry leaders, but all the way filtered down trickled down to the very, even the young, from the schools, starting from a young age in primary schools. Why not? So I'm a strong believer for education, and I think that could soften the impact of any attack if it ever happens as well. Yeah.
Totally agreed with the point. Cybersecurity awareness and education for both technical and non-technical area of people is very important, because at the end we see it's the human error or the human factor in security that does the thing. So another thing that we have been talking about, the how this affected other countries. So talking country wise, India has seen the most number of attacks attempted per organization, with an average of 213 weekly attacks since the beginning of this year. So countries like Argentina, Chile, France, Taiwan are seen to be attacked more. So these nations that are still in the phase of their development and are not secure enough in the cyberspace. So what impact can ransomware attacks have on these nations? Preeti ma'am, if you would like to go.
So I think impact, we are very well aware it is majorly from the ransom value standpoint. So it happens in any geography, any country, the impact remains the same. Now, what is important to consider here is our preparedness. So when we talk about the number of attacks that you highlighted, we have seen in India for past so many years. So I think from the critical infrastructure standpoint, I can say that we are good because we have great segregation between the IT and the OT component there. So we are not getting on to the internet space. They have their own intranet space. So we are able to sort of segment it and avoid such attacks. But having said and done with the tremendous change in the technologies that is happening with cyber physical systems and all, so there would be definitely a time when we will also get into that. So we won't also be spared by these attacks and the impacts. On the other hand, in terms of when such attack happens, so I was also tempted to pitch in when Vandana and Ginny were talking about how do we calm the public there. So I think I love there the traditional school of thought we used to have. The information it should be shared need to know basis, right? So we need not to share all of it. So if an ransomware attack happens in say Colonial pipeline organization, so they have their internal key stakeholders. They know, the entire setup, how it originated, what are the actual impacts, and how they are going to contain. But they are not going to pass on all the information to everything. So we need to segregate that, need to know basis. Then we involve the legal counsels, then FBI, and based on that, it goes to the public. So I think that filtering is very, very important to avoid these sort of chaoses as well as impact that happens because of this ransomware attacks. Over to you, Arushi.
Thank you, ma'am. So I totally agreed with your points. The preparedness is as important as this one. Vandana ma'am, what do you think on this?
I would say that we need to be very cautious, because these things will happen. Whatever we say, how much ever we are prepared, the only thing is that we can have certain technologies which are adaptive ready, but at the same time, we need to have our people. They need to be ready with it. They need to have the relevant kind of information that how exactly we should deal in such situations. Because if they know how to deal in such situations, it can help a lot in the longer run. I know some organizations do this as a mock drive. They have literally created ransomwares which are internally built so that they don't impact the organization, but those are internal dry runs or mock drills, or whatever we call it as, but those are internal stimulations that happen. And at the same time, I'll tell you one scenario which happened just the day before yesterday to one of my friends. So I am a huge fan of following things the right way, wherein there should not be any kind of movie download from anywhere, torrent or any other place. So a friend of mine tried doing that. And what happened next? When the download happened, there was a file, which was file name, then the exe, then something else, then some keys, something were there. Now, when you understand that these things are not right, why do we do that? Right? So now when that person opened and started realizing that there are some things, and for the fun fact that that was the main system that person used to do everything, all the video checks, all the work, everything, and realized that these things shouldn't happen. This is like the most minor thing that we were discussing day before yesterday, but these things can happen with anyone. The only thing is that employees can be cautious when it comes to organization. And as a normal person, individual, we can be cautious in downloading, in clicking on the links that we use, because these are some things which are so basic, but can lead to huge attacks. And these stimulations which happen internally, especially in case of organization, if I'm talking about, then they can help individual be ready for any such attacks in future. So these are my 2 cents on it.
Great. Thanks a lot, Vandana ma'am. So again and again, we have a discussion about the human factor of cybersecurity. So given the significance of the human factor in security, how effective can cybersecurity education programs and awareness campaigns be in averting the significant cyber attacks and breaches? Sarva, if you would like to go.
Sure. Thanks, Arushi. I think I'm already feeling so inspired by all the thoughts that are coming together by my wonderful co-panelists. So 2 aspects to look at this. One is the role of media. So I think another aspect to just add is sometimes right now, the fact that most of us are locked in our own homes. So there's the tendency of the media to sensationalize the wrong things and focus on the negative aspects. But I think as the cybersecurity community, all of us should come together. We should engage with the media, and we should actually work with them to educate people at individual levels. And also, I mean, organizations should pay that much attention to educate their employees, because to Jeannie's point, like everybody has a role to play in cybersecurity. And another very inspiring thing that I came across, I think which Jeannie mentioned earlier in today's conversation, was about the No More Ransom project. So that's an international collaboration of, security researchers, of government agencies who have come together. And do you know, like over the last 4 years, they have impacted 4.2 million people, and they have helped save 632 million USD in ransom, because they have published free decryption tools in their website, and they are also helping you, get access to your data, which has been maybe encrypted by a ransomware. So there's a tremendous amount of role that cybersecurity education plays, and we have to engage in that. And another thing is the realization that we can't do it alone. We have to collaborate as a community. So it's like global cybersecurity warfare, where we have to come together, use our skills, our abilities, build an inclusive workforce, and just go against the cyber criminals. So these are some of the points I wanted to share.
Great. Thanks a lot, Sarva, for highlighting, the importance of communities in cybersecurity, because I myself, I am just a I'm 3rd-year student now in a security program, and I have received so much support from the community, be it VCs, be it InfoSec girls. So I have got so much support, love, and mentorship from every one of you as community, and it has just motivated me to work more in future for other girls who come into cybersecurity cybersecurity. So, Preeti ma'am, what is your view on the same?
Absolutely, Arushi, you were bang on. I mean, I think community power is something which is contagious, and it's just keeps spreading. So talking about the awareness about these incidents and all, so Sarba very well pointed out how our communities are coming forward with specific to this ransomware, no ransomware projects and all. Now, going back from the society standpoint, because end of the day, it's the public, the community, the society, all of it, right? So nowadays, all of us are forced to be inside our homes and connect virtually. Schools are happening online. The kids are being impacted. All the organizations are being impacted. So we do see these communities are bringing lot other awareness platforms for everyone. We do a lot of awareness programs, especially for kids, girls, preteens and teen girls. So there are great programs that we are talking about. After conducting such sessions, the school authorities are coming back to us and telling, can we have such sessions for parents as well? So it is like spreading now. So the demands are automatically coming. So same way, I think when we talk about specific to ransomware attacks, so we have these specific communities. So subsequently, I think these awareness would be key, at least at the end user who may not be directly impacted, but in a way, if the entire operation shuts down, definitely there is a trickle down impact that is coming to the end user. So end user awareness, how they can be our eyes and ears, how they can communicate. I think that is something we can work on as community as well. Yeah. Over to you, Arushi.
Thank you, ma'am. Totally agreed. So, Vandana ma'am, what is your view? You run a very good community. We are a part of it. And what are your views on the same?
My point would be that join any community. We all have the same motive. The main thing is that you should feel that you are associated with it and you're learning something from it. And similarly, these communities, they might be running separately, but they all work towards the same goal, be it educating parents, be it educating kids, be it educating diverse people, students, or anyone. And now I can see that there are elderly people who are getting educated. So they are contributing in a huge way. I remember when I started my journey, I didn't know that these communities exist, or they were not there in India, or maybe they were there, but I had no clue about it. But the moment I stepped in, I would say that's when the change in my career all started. And I remember giving my first talk, not looking at anyone, now being on the panel with all of you and talking about communities. So there's a huge shift. There's a whole lot of learning that anyone can get from these communities and can be benefited out of it. So join any community that you feel you belong to. And at the same time, if you feel there's no community around you or there's something that you want to start off, go ahead if you have the bandwidth to do it. Everyone will be supportive of you in that. So
Thank you, Vandana ma'am. And it has been a great panel discussion so far. I have been really, blessed to be with you all and discuss this scenario with all of you. And now we will be taking some of the audience questions, and I will start with So Ritika Pandey asked a question in the YouTube chat. First of all, I would like to acknowledge Vandana ma'am for answering the questions there. Thanks a lot, ma'am. Ritika Pandey has the question that since the attackers demanded Bitcoin, which is pseudonymous, can this be used to track or find some information about the attackers? Jeannie ma'am, you would like to go first.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure, ma'am. So as the attackers demanded Bitcoin, which is pseudonymous, and this can be used to track or find some information about the attackers?
Okay. I'm not an expert with Bitcoins. I'm not sure if, Sarba is able to discuss that a little bit more and be more well-placed to address this question. But I do believe that nothing online is truly hidden. So but I don't want to get into speculative discussion. So anyone else that's more able to take on that question?
I have the same views. Yeah, Sarva, go.
Sure, thank you. So I think there's a very good point. I mean, the resource that's available freely on ransomware. It's called Ransomware for Dummies, published by Cisco. So you can just go through it, and it has a lot of good information. So the whole point of using cryptocurrency is that the cyber criminals do not want to be tracked. Because otherwise they could have it would have been easier for them to ask for a bank transfer, or that would have been, I think, faster also. But the whole point of using cryptocurrency is because they want to stay as anonymous as possible. But having said that, I think in the dark web, for any organization, it's also important to have affiliates or threat advisory or threat intelligence around what's happening in the dark web, so that in case, because we might think that organizations don't have visibility into the dark web, but most of the organizations have a source through which they can know what's going on, and that could be a very good key point for you to actually track your attackers, the threat intel which is surrounding the dark web.
So if I may add to that, Arushi, so Sarba very well brought it out. The overall motive is not to be tracked. So that's why using cryptocurrencies. So I think to be precise, I mean, there is no straightforward answer to it, but we say that research is still on this. So one of the mega events, it's an international event, you would have heard about HackP from Kerala Police. So they are working on, demystifying all this dark web things. So there could be, one of the possibilities that we could come out with a solution how to track the cryptocurrency transaction as well. So at this moment, to answer readily, there is no such technology existing, but yes, research is still on to figure out such technologies and solutions to it.
Thanks a lot, Preeti ma'am. So we have had a very good discussion for now, and we are ahead of time. And so I would just like to, thank you all once again for, having this panel discussion, making this panel discussion, possible. And I will now invite Ms. Bhavna Yadav, President, VC's VIT Bhopal Student Chapter, to give the vote of thanks to our guest. Bhavna, over to you.
Hello everyone. So with that, here we come at the end of the session, and I can confidently say that today everyone present here will be taking back home a new learning. And for that, on behalf of our whole Vice's VIT Bhopal team, I would like to extend a sincere gratitude to our esteemed guests, Ms. Jenny Sujan Gan, Ms. Shabra Roy, Ms. Vandana Verma, and Major Preeti Bhishkar ma'am, to take some of their valuable time from their very busy schedule for the discussion. I would also wish to thank our university for providing us the opportunity to conduct this event, and this would not have been possible without the support of our mentor, Dr. Shishir Kumar Shandalya, and faculty coordinator, Dr. Kanchanlata Kashyap. With that, here we reach the end of the session, I guess, with the promise to bring much more such events soon.
Thank you very much. Thanks to organizers. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bhavna. Thank you, everyone, for the panelists as well as the audience for tuning in. And it marks the end of our session. Again, I hope that you all are safe and doing well at your home. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. It's been a great panel discussion.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You've been amazing, Arushi. So thanks.
Thank you.